Thanks. All right, so I am Kate Orff, and I see the future of landscape architecture moving toward a new paradigm of urban ecology as activism. This is also the thesis of a new book, which is about the SCAPE practice and which is out now. Rather than a passive backdrop where the working landscape is aestheticized into pleasurable scenes, our aim is to bring the working landscape into the foreground and celebrate, magnify, and define it through projects that provide a kind of scaffolding for meaningful participation. In the market-driven economy, in this sort of post-industrial age, and in the era of global climate change, landscape can be an active generator of social life, bringing people together with a common purpose. This has profound implications on how we work and practice, and who we is. Here, high school students are surveying benthic habitat and collecting data in New York Harbor as a sort of a predecessor, data collection predecessor to one of our projects. So I try to practice landscape architecture kind of as a stance of activism, with the idea that we can sort of choreograph landscapes that promulgate kind of new civic life. I'm interested in building publics, not projects. And I'm interested in places where people and citizens are actively involved in making spaces and in resetting ecologies. So in the age of climate change, we are all landscape architects. Intentionally and not, everyone is shaping urban nature. But to do this, we need kind of new tools. We need to be proactive rather than just responding. We need to be purpose-driven and adaptive. So beyond writing a tight spec, new tools and talents that are needed are here showcased in this image. Here you have Gina Worth, now design principal at SCAPE, convening a conversation about sort of a high school science curriculum with high school teachers, students, advisors, etc. Basically, this curriculum kit that is for Staten Island science teachers is essentially this sort of viral kind of method through which the project that we're working on, Living Breakwaters, is sort of embedded in time and in people's lives. So if we need to know how to convene, we also need to know how to organize. Again, sort of beyond compiling the L- sheets in our drawing sets, designers need to learn to organize and think about design as providing tools for others. In this East Harlem Community Garden, our design project was accessible and available on an 8.5 by 11 pamphlet with the idea that it is simple enough to be built by others, by community members, by people who live there. With no capital budget, this is a way forward. And in interventions in local, everyday spaces, landscape architects have always been experts in physical design. But what about the social? We pretty much suck at that. So I'm interested in building projects and in projects that build capacity and perform sort of a social infrastructure. In this small community garden, but in all our projects, large and small, we aim to overlay the regenerative capacity of living infrastructure with the methods of community organizing. So landscape architects can foster a direct connection with the local environment, and this should be one of our core missions as designers. But in most American cities, and this is a site of ours in Lexington, Kentucky, engagement with anything, literally, but asphalt and beige concrete, and blue glass in the background, I might add, is truly impossible. So the path of Town Branch, a water body that was basically what Lexington was founded around, is beneath this lovely road. It's also, fostering engagement also requires revealing hidden systems and making them legible. Here, we interpreted how water moves through karst into a series of public spaces and programs that formed a framework for the future of Lexington, and we are implementing this vision now in phases. But these transformations take decades, so to jumpstart a broader coalition, we got a grant from the Kentucky DEQ to develop what's called the Town Branch Water Walk. How can you get people excited about an underground culvert, we asked. Not an easy question. And how can you get them to become long-term advocates for change in their own neighborhoods? This is key. So we drew connections along a transect of the urban-rural gradient of water, worked with University of Kentucky students to develop a thread of research agendas, and then kind of took it on the road, literally, staging a block party, a kind of a roadway sit-in, to share the work and to prefigure in a way that kind of prefigured this massive urban transformation. So in this project, we're not just building a landscape design, we're building an ecological constituency. Landscape is not just about people, vegetation, water, it's also about the non-humans among us. We need to advocate broadly for species survival and interdependency. Here on the left, you can see this was taken, some scapers were out counting horseshoe crabs in Jamaica Bay at midnight, some X-rated activity happening here. And on the right, a festival that we participated in Raritan Bay, but actually connecting the dots between the lack of these sort of gradual shallow water shorelines and species survival. Horseshoe crabs once have survived many eras of extinction, but they will not likely survive the next 50 years. Landscape is a shared co-habitat, and we can work in concrete ways to achieve this. These bird-safe building guidelines were done back in '06 with a grant from the Fish and Wildlife Service, outlined a very specific series of design tools to prevent bird strike. And they're now distributed by the American Bird Conservancy, so they've scaled up. And here it's scaled down into a little tiny project of ours on the Hudson River, where the idea is in action. So you have human comfort and bird-safe and bird-visible glass. Like the bird-safe guidelines, I've tried to focus my energy not on the traditional idea of projects, but on things and actions that start other things and actions that scale up change, all the while basically raging against design as a luxury product. I think about every project in the office as a pilot, not responding to what is, but really kind of trying to work toward what should be. And this is a pilot in the Gowanus Bay to test water quality. Each one is also a sort of social experiment. Here, a fuzzy rope knitting party, kind of similar to that echoes of that park raising party I showed images before. In this format, we kind of knitted these massive panels. I guess the subtext of my declaration is there should be more parties. We knitted these fuzzy rope panels, placed them in the bay, and tested water quality and monitored species richness with local biologist Mike Judge. So these small-scale projects directly inform large multi-million-dollar infrastructure projects that are currently on the boards in our office. By starting conversations, by informing a regulatory debate, and by bringing like-minded parties together. Pilots can exist at the scale of a neighborhood, of a site, or at a region. And here, our project called Living Breakwaters, the goal of this project was to create a kind of a permanent interface, you can see in the top left, among a piece of infrastructure, a social network onshore of schools and communities, and a revitalized marine ecology. So the goal was to sort of interlock them in this permanent standoff that just gets more complex over time. We have to visualize and advance ecology as a social practice that engineers behavior change, and simultaneously engineers sort of an ecological rebounding. So the project is also a regulatory pilot in that it is illegal to build, and so we are advancing and pushing regulatory boundaries that we hope will be critical for maintaining a whole gradient of ecological and shallow water gradient landscapes within the New York Harbor. It is a wave attenuating breakwater seeded with oysters and designed to cultivate finfish habitat. It is also a pilot for communication, communicating complexity of landscape systems, trade-offs, and values to people. So we need to develop local activist agendas, new tools of engagement, and politicize our practices. Here, this woman, self-radicalized and inspired by our project, made her own hat and her own flyers to help get people to come to our community living breakwaters. And you can see the bathing cap at center, so thoughtfully picked out. The project ultimately reconnects residents to a revitalized shoreline and a resedimented shoreline, one which has been eroded and privatized. So now we spent the last year doing extensive surveys, leading this project, and basically acting as the glue, holding all the physical, ecological, social, risk reduction components together. In-house, we've developed these sort of iterative design tools that integrate design and engineering through a sort of hydrodynamic model that's live testable. We are working to get it done. And importantly, we've learned that equally critical to physical design is community building. These are equally heavy lifts and equally important. So this is the goal, linking the social to the ecological and scaling it up. As I've tried to show today, I think we should develop joint social and ecological agendas in forums very large and ambitious, and also very small and very modest and close to home. And then through our work, we can advance these projects. So let's get to work. Thank you.